Hey, what's going on, guys? It's the Empowered People Podcast, where each and every week we're going to tell, share, and listen to stories that are meant to motivate us to action, to motivate us to movement. We believe that so much success, opportunity, education only comes when we're willing to get up and move. And if you haven't noticed already, each and every Thursday, we are trying to turn the spotlight, turn the microphone on to people in the community that are doing amazing things, that like Empowered Electric have tried to step out and make Kansas City brighter. If you have not listened to last week's episode, we get to sit down with Shane Fowler of MindMade. And before Shane Fowler started MindMade, he started as a person, right? When he was a wee little lad. And we get into that, him as a person, right? His childhood, his upbringing, his education, his family. It is 100% worth you going back and listening to. If you don't believe me, try it. Go back and listen to it, because it's really going to bleed into what we're going to talk about now, which is the present to the future of what Shane is doing with MindMade, an architecture company, a design company here in Kansas City that is just honestly putting out amazing work. He didn't pay me to say that. Actually, I'm paying him to design my space. So it's actually the reverse sponsorship. I'm a proud sponsor of MindMade. But so one of the funny reasons that I love Shane so much, I'm so into him, is because my first encounter with architects, Shane, I don't know if I've told you this story, was actually one of the very first projects I ever ran was Fort Hays State University, a soccer complex. It was Conrath was the general contractor. I mean, I remember all these little details. Yeah, for sure. And I go to a job site meeting, and there's like the owner, the owner's rep, the architect is there, the GC, you know, all the big shots. And I roll up, and I immediately have like 10 questions, and they're not stupid questions. They're things that I have gone through each and every set of the drawings, not just the electrical pages, every little detail. And I found, discrepancies. I found like questions about mounting heights, because I want this project to be the best, right? Yeah. And so I'm asking all these questions, and the architect, as I'm talking, literally puts his hand up, kind of like this, and he goes, I just want to clarify, subcontractors talk to general contractors ask questions to the architect, the architect verifies with the owner, and then the information passes back down. Kind of basically saying, shut up, punk, you're beneath me. Yeah. And like me, I was like a little new puppy dog. Like you kick it and it's just back. It didn't even faze me. Like I'm just so excited. But as I got older, I was like, man, that guy was kind of a jerk. Yeah, and you not only are not a jerk, but like you're giving up another weeknight, another time to come in and just talk about business and shop and things with the subcontractor. So dude, thanks a ton. Sorry, that's a long-winded introduction.
No, it's awesome.
So
it's fun to hear
if you were going to elevator pitch and catch everybody up in case they don't do as I said and go back and listen, what would you say about yourself?
I would say I went through an interesting childhood, really developed into the man I am, and starting to create a business that we hope really helps unfetter potential in not only Kansas City, but in the young talent market of architecture and kind of the construction industry as well. And so go back and kind of get the preface, and then come into this episode, and hopefully we'll keep it entertaining for you guys.
Yeah, no, for sure we will. And so we left off last time, you graduate college, you went to grad school, you become an architect. Yep. What happens? I mean, do you just, graduate and there's a job waiting for you right away, or how does that kind of go about?
Yeah, so I kind of lucked out. So it was late, it would have been May 2007 when I graduated. And I actually took a job with my teacher. One of my professors went to a firm in Omaha, Nebraska called Randy Brown Architects, and he just happened to ask me if I would like to tag along and kind of come under his wing and kind of be trained, and I really respected him. He's a great guy. His name is Brian Kelly. He teaches at the University of Nebraska now, and I took him up on that. I thought it sounded like a good idea. I was a young, arrogant punk, thought I knew it all, and I thought he would be a good person to set me straight along the way. So I moved up to Omaha, and I got lucky because it was kind of an interesting market. As you know, the 2008 kind of crisis hit, financial crisis, and so not a lot of people actually landed jobs right out of school. Probably about half our class did. So I got lucky and kind of headed up to Omaha.
Did he talk to you about employment before you had graduated, or was it right after you graduated?
It was like right at graduation. Because I think his kind of tenure was up and he was deciding what to do, and his hometown was Omaha, so they reached out to him and said, hey, why don't you come back home, work for me? And there was some history there, and yeah, that was kind of the process.
Well, isn't it amazing how a lot of times, I mean, even, you know, as the Super Bowl happened the way it happened, I remember Robert Kraft, you know, winning his 6th Super Bowl with the New England Patriots. He said, now I want to pass the mic off to the two people that have done it better than anyone ever has. And he was talking about, you know, Coach Belichick and Tom Brady, talking about that combo and just how when you think about success, it's hard to detach yourself and just think you did it all yourself. Where like there's an opportunity with this teacher that you respected, that you thought was going a great place, and he's going, hey, why don't you come along with me? I mean, I think that's pretty awesome. Yeah,
it's always interesting because sometimes I think I used to think I was a self-made man because I came from humble beginnings. I didn't have a lot of people that taught me about money or business or anything like that. But in all actuality, if you go way out and kind of look at it from a third-party perspective, no one's really a self-made man or woman. We've all had people along the way that's kind of pushed us or encouraged us or gave us opportunities we never would have had without them in our life. So yeah, it's an amazing recollection to go back and think about the people that have really helped you along the way.
Yeah, and I have a theory, but I'm not going to say it until you answer. But was it a very lucrative position? Was it something that was like really like money focused, or was it opportunity focused?
Yeah, so that's an interesting choice you have to make right out of school. Like you can take what we call portfolio jobs, where you go work for a high design company, and those are way more rigorous, and they less pay usually because your compensation comes in great projects that you work on, or you can go work for more of a corporate type structured firm and make a little bit more cash along the way. This was not. It was a high design firm, high-end residential and high-end commercial projects. And funny story, at the interview, we actually went out to lunch and he was driving a Maserati, and
It's a cheap car.
Yeah, he just got it. He didn't even know how to use it. That was the funny thing. Like, you have to like do weird stuff. I didn't know if you guys knew this, but you actually have to pump the brakes like 3 times before you put the key in the ignition. And then you also have to like tap the gear like left 3 times. It's like a secret code, I guess, for like to make sure no one steals the car. But anyway, he was like when we were driving to wherever we were going to eat lunch, he offered me the salary, and it was almost laughable. Like, it was under 30 grand, and I'm riding around in this car that's like 5 times that at least. And so it was pretty funny, but I reluctantly took it.
Well, so why? I mean, why not tell him to screw off?
I think it was the opportunity. So I grew up in Springfield, and there was a lot of history there, and I was kind of ready to get out, was one factor. And I think the other factor was like really nice work. And I felt like jobs at the time were really limited amongst that front unless you wanted to move kind of to the coasts. So I just felt like it was a good opportunity, and I knew I didn't have to stay there forever. So I'd go and kind of put in my time and see what the opportunity was like, and see where it took me.
So how long did you stay there for?
Oh, 1 year, actually.
Okay,
so I left a year after. It was super rigorous. We worked at least 80 hours a week, but everybody in the room was super talented. So again, I wouldn't kind of change that for anything. I was with probably, bar none, pound for pound, the most talented group of individuals I'd ever worked with. But, it kind of ran its course. And I had a girlfriend at the time in Kansas City, so I kind of got engaged, and I didn't kind of get engaged. I got engaged, and I moved back to Kansas City.
Do you stay in contact with some of those people?
Very seldomly. Everybody's parted ways. No one's at that office now, not surprisingly. But I keep in touch. I go back to University of Nebraska every once in a while for crits with Brian. That's a professor there now. But otherwise, not really. Like, touch base every once in a blue moon to see how people are doing, but yeah, not really.
Well, I mean, even if you don't stay in touch, I love that you said, because I come from a similar background where I worked at a company that was extremely rigorous, paid very little, but there was tons of opportunity. And I would say, like, pound for pound, they were some of the best electricians. And there's this camaraderie, this affinity towards them that I want to see them do well. Even if I don't stay in touch with them, I'm rooting for them.
Yeah.
Even if I, parted ways with that company and I don't necessarily agree with all the values, it's like, I love you.
Yeah, completely agree.
Which is super cool. And so to, people that you're taking opportunities and stuff, it's like, don't view everyone as competition. Don't backstab. I mean, they are competition, but there's a way to be like healthy competition.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, if you look at any good sports team, they're always trying to push themselves. They're all competition, but I think more so than anything else, you're your own competition. Like, you're the only one that's going to push you to exceed a standard that you set for yourself. And my standard's always going to be a bar higher than the next person. At least that's what I strive for. And so really, you're your own competition, and hopefully you can kind of be happy with everyone else's successes. And that's kind of where you get ahead, I think.
And if you fail, it's on you. It's not on anyone else. Like, you fail. Yeah. So that's a beautiful thing too. Like, when you do achieve success, you can be proud of it. Yeah, and when you fail, you gotta own that. Yep. So it runs its course there. You're doing high-end residential. Yeah. Yeah. You're in the midst of like chaos that's about to happen. I mean, that's for when the company I was at went from 146 to 40. I mean, you're on the brink of that, and you're moving to Kansas City. Who did you came for a girl, but did you get a job lined up, or how did that work out?
I got a job lined up at Helix Architects here in town. I don't know why they took me on, but they did. And, it was a challenging time. I was there for, I guess, about a year also. So I made it in 2009, I think, but I was in the third round of layoffs. So I think they had 30 people that got laid off. I think each round was about 6 to 10 people, and there was 4 rounds. I was in the third. So, it was tough. That was a tough situation, and it really kind of provided kind of a different outlook as to who you are as a person once you go through that and kind of figure out if you need to get busy or if you're just going to kind of succumb to the circumstances. But decided to get busy.
Holy crap. What did you do when you got laid off? I mean, as a man, were you married at the time?
Yep, married.
Okay, so just got married, have bills, have responsibilities, get laid off. I always think through if I went home and had to tell Bridget, like, hey, I don't have a job. I mean, talk about that.
That was one of the hardest conversations I ever had, was with my wife at the time, and that was my first wife, and she was just a retail manager, so it's not like we were counting on her income to support us. So I had school loans, I had a mortgage, those weren't going anywhere, and I just really had to figure out what I was going to do because the market was falling out beneath us. And so, I just decided to look at every opportunity and see what happened, and I got busy. I grieved for about a day. I feel like everybody needs that time to kind of grieve and figure out what happened and what went wrong and what to do with it all. And then I kind of compartmentalized that and moved on to finding what my next step was.
Dude, people grieve for weeks, months. Some people never rebound, and you're like, I grieved for a day.
Yeah, that's all I had time for.
That's extremely like bold and brave and manly and whatever, courageous. So kudos to you. Well, I mean, like, I know a lot of people that, man, that would crush them. I mean, I don't know how fast I would rebound. I mean, I think it would take more than a day. I'm pretty sure it would take more than a day. So did you immediately start job hunting? Did you only look at architecture? What did you do?
At first I started architecture, but I was striking out. Everybody was laying off, not hiring. And so I kind of had a little come to Jesus moment and figure out what I was going to do. And I just applied everywhere, talked to all my friends where they were working, retail, food service, whatever it was. And I was literally a day away from calling and accepting a job at a shoe sales place in the Independence Mall. And that's when I got a call from a friend who said their firm is actually looking for someone, which I had no idea why. And so I interviewed there. I did like a week's worth of free work for them just to see if I was a good fit. And they offered me the job, and I'm not selling shoes today, so good or bad.
Dude, that's crazy to me, because I think if I would go into, and this is me just being honest and like having to work on myself a little bit, is like you would look at someone at a shoe store and you'd be like, man, that guy's not ambitious. That guy's probably not educated. Like, what did he do wrong? And that could have been you. Yeah, the dude that's 3 times smarter than me. You know what I mean?
And so it's like statement, but
you know what I mean? It's just like when can we come to a place that we don't just judge the book by its cover? Yeah. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just that's so interesting. I would have never thought.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you would have been a good shoe salesman.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
But I think so awesome. So I mean, part of the thing is I do think, and like we said at the beginning of this podcast, that we want to tell stories that motivate people to action, because maybe there's a person right now that just got laid off. Yeah. And it's day 101 that they are just sitting around and moping, and they're sitting and they're staring at their phone waiting for something to call. And there's, hey, get off your couch, go apply, swallow your pride and get whatever job, because it's in the midst of moving that opportunity comes. And that's kind of what I heard you say.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's the case. Just get in front of people, talk to people, start making contacts. Like that's half the battle, is just getting out there and putting yourself out there. And when you're in that moment, you don't want to. You want to do the exact opposite. You want to pull the sheets up over your head and go to sleep until noon or whatever, but and kind of just drown in that. But really, if you get out and start making things happen, that's when opportunities arise. And so, yeah, you got to be proactive. And it's all about perspective too. Like if you figure that as long as you're generating movement, that's probably more conducive to success than it is just laying around and doing nothing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So go to the next company.
Yeah, Clockwork.
Architecture company, Clockwork. Yeah. Love those guys.
Yeah, good guys.
Guys and girls. Love them.
And at the time, it was just like 3 of us. So, yeah. I don't know many of them now, but I liked them at the time.
It's funny that you say that, because I literally just the other day sent a message to them via Instagram and like talked mad crap, because I drove by at like 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And all their lights were off, of course. They're like, go home.
Yeah.
Have a family.
Right.
I'm like, why aren't you guys working? Come on. You know, like,
yeah.
But they're just good dudes. Will over there is a phenomenal guy. I love him to death. And they're right across the street from Freestyle Poke.
Yeah.
Which, if you are in Kansas City and you want to feel like you're in Hawaii, be sure to. They are not a proud sponsor, but I am
they should be now.
They are not a proud sponsor, but I am a proud consumer. So be sure to check out Freestyle Poke to nourish all your poke needs.
Oh my God. There it is. Yeah.
No. So once again, guys, so listen, even as we interview Shane with MindMade, like, I'm an electrical company, right? I mean, I'm a nobody, but I'm interested in people that are doing cool things. And so, like, of course, it's like tacky for me to like throw out Freestyle Poke, but it's just like, dude, it's fun. It's new. It's good. It's trying to bring like seafood bowls to the Midwest. Like, what are you doing? And like, as we continue to talk, like, I feel like I spent, let's get into MindMade. Like, I remember whenever I came across your stuff, dude, I spent hours on your website, like reading your blog posts, looking at that freaking cult compound that you want to build someday. But just like, and going like, who is this guy? Like, number one, he's a dreamer. Number one, he's a mover. Number one, he's extremely educated and skilled. Like, he's out doing things, and he's not just going, well, I just draw soffits and houses. You know, you're like, you're dreaming big and you're using your skills. And so that's why I love it. And that's why I'm like glad to sit down and interview you. So
thank you.
Is it from like, where do you go from Clockwork?
So from Clockwork, I was there for quite a while, like 4 years, I think I was there. And then I went to SFS Architects because I wanted to, Clockwork at the time was more interiors, which they're not now. It kind of developed into something else, but I wanted to get into new construction architecture.
When you say interiors, do you mean like tenant improvements?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was
like interior design, tenant improvements. They do some branding at the time, stuff like that. But I wanted to branch out and do kind of more large scale new construction architecture. And so I went to SFS. I had a friend over there, and they kind of brought me on board. And that was my last permanent, like behind the desk job, I guess you could say.
Good, because I was starting to get sick of this resume because I want to get to MindMade.
Yeah.
I'm like, good grief. All right, you're a great architect that is working for a lot of great companies. Helix, Clockwork, two of my favorite here in Kansas City. I don't know SFS.
They do more large scale kind of municipal work. So I worked a lot on community centers. So the Excelsior Spring Community Center was a good project for us. And so kind of more large scale architecture. Gotcha.
Okay, so what is it? Like, give me the origin story of MindMade. You're sitting in your cubicle at SFS, and you're just like, I got an idea in my mind that I want made.
I think there was kind of two arms, I guess. One's conceptual and one's pragmatic. The conceptual side, oddly enough, MindMade was kind of started as a criticism on the profession itself. Yeah, I know. This might be picking a fight here. But my sister and I, we kind of talk about it often. And we saw so many things that were going wrong with the profession. It was kind of in this pernicious state, and we wanted to kind of create something that was the antithesis of that, or working against that. And there's so many factors that tie into that, which I would love to go into. I could talk all about that all day long.
Let's go.
So, well, it's so much. We kind of boiled it down to the most dominant factor being fear. And architecture doesn't really exist in our eyes very much anymore. What exists is building, and we've kind of figured out that architects have given away so much value, and it comes in the form of risk. So the more risk that you kind of push off to someone else, the more value we feel like you get rid of. And on top of that, architects have become so devalued that we feel like it's in a state of adulation, which is just like servitude, like just yes men, basically. We don't really carry a lot of weight because we come in at the middle to the end of the project. And so we kind of wanted to take on more risk and actually try to gain more value and just kind of swan dive into that and see where it's going, because we reject fear. That's one of our core values, is reject fear. So that's just one component of.
Well, dude, so I love that you said that, and I don't think it's wrong for you to say, hey, industry standard, this is kind of what we're seeing.
Definitely.
And we want to try to do something different, because I think it's gutsy, it's risky, and it's not necessarily wrong or right. If people want to buy, it's kind of like when they talk about capitalism, and it's like if people want to buy, 5,000 pounds of Twinkies, is it Twinkies' obligation to tell them not to?
That's what I want to know.
Well, in case, don't they last for thousands of years or something?
Shelf life.
Like moist forever. Yeah. But anyways, so because I feel the same way, like in the construction industry, fear sells. Like, oh man, that breaker tripped because there's a massive ground fault, and you don't want your house to burn down, and I'm going to charge you $1,000 to come change some plugs.
Right.
When honestly, what it was is you plugged in a bad toaster that tripped the breaker. Throw your toaster away. Go buy one at Target for $20 and move on with your life.
Yeah.
But like that doesn't make that $1,000 service call. And so that's one thing for me too, is like I don't sell based on fear.
Yeah. Definitely.
Most people are like, oh, I think my house is going to burn down. I'm like, your house is not going to burn down.
Yeah.
Now I'm not an expert. It might.
Yeah.
But probably not.
Probably not. Right.
So I appreciate that from an architect.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do fear, and it's, I say, more restrictive actually onto your product. So architects don't do a lot of things because they're fearful that, for instance, I can't tell you how many times we had a design that we were going to take to a client, and then the principal said that's going to scare the client. And so we never presented it. We went with something way more safe. Well, how are we ever going to hit progress if we live in that constant state of barrier and just saying that that's going to scare them? So not to get spiritual again, but it's kind of biblical. You can do something out of fear, you can do something out of love. Well, fear is more restrictive. Love is going to get you progress. So we're always going to try to operate out of that passion side and that progress side of design and architecture, and just keep pushing the status quo. Like that's never an option for us.
Not to make it personal or anything, but like I've experienced that, where when you showed me the design, and what was funny is I feel like you did the opposite, and you did above and beyond the work. So when you laid out our floor plan, it was very cut and dry. It was like square, edges, office building, this, that, and the other. Yeah. But in the right corner, it shows the sinusoid wave, which is like alternating current electricity that goes up and down. Yeah. And then there's this squared office building that, boom, this thing hits, and like all the corners of our offices like round out, and they have this wave that goes with electricity. Yeah. And like we could have easily said, no, we'd rather just stick with the squared off edges, this, that, and the other. But it was kind of like showing us what, is safe. Yeah. And then what it could be, and giving us the choice. Yeah. And it's like, it's not wrong if we would have said, hey, we want the standard normal offices, cut and dry, squared edges, this, that, and the other. Sure. But like you put yourself out there. Mm-hmm. You rejected fear, and like it's funny because like I loved it. I didn't think Paul was going to love it. And guaranteed, I almost say if you would have just rolled out the drawings and it would have been rounded edges, he would have been like, what the heck is that? But like with you telling the story and the narrative, it was like he absolutely loved it. Yeah. Absolutely. So I'm thankful that you did that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, architecture or design should be an extension of the brand. Like that's how you're telling someone's story. It's no different than people over profit. Like it's an extension of that. And I think that good architecture or good design has personality. It could be scary, it could be exciting, it could be boring, which is not good architecture, but I'm saying it has a personality. And so I think it's our job to entertain people to some extent. I think that's the business we're in, is to entertain people. And so I think that spaces should reflect that.
Love it. Love it. So you said that was one arm. You said like MindMade was like there was two arms. So what's the next arm?
So the other arm is I was actually moonlighting, and we just won 2 big projects, really, really well-known clients. One's here, one's in North Carolina. And I'm a guy who takes my responsibilities seriously, and I was actually starting to drop balls on both sides. So from a pragmatic standpoint, I just had to make a decision. I decided I could always go back to an office, but I had to take this risk and opportunity. And so I did it. I set a hard date, which is one of the hardest things I've ever done. Like no matter what, my wife and I agreed that's the date you're going to quit. No ifs, ands, or buts. And I did, and then that's kind of when MindMade initiated. So,
okay, so a couple things with that. Number one, when I started Empowered Electric, I had 5 weeks paid vacation that I was able to cash out, and I had one project. And I was like, so you had 2 projects, you know. I'm more of a risk taker than you. No. But I mean, but you see so many people waiting like, well, I need to make sure that I have enough work to, you know, for my yearly salary. And you're like, come on, bro. Yeah. Like, you got to jump out there. I mean, just think about Christopher Columbus, like day 70 in the ocean, like, I thought you said land was out here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there is, you know. Right. I mean, there's just risk. You got to do it. Yeah. And you're right. There is. And so for me, I think that is true. I think risk without safety is stupid. So what I mean is, like, as a journeyman electrician, I knew, hey, dude, if I fail, I can go get a job and make $25 an hour. Right. Like, that's what I'm going to go do. Yeah. And I have 5 weeks basically to figure it out in one project. Yeah. And like, you don't need as much runway as you think. Right.
Yeah. I think it's funny when you spoke to that, a couple things came to mind. One's like Cortez burned the boats, right? Like, no turning back, no going anywhere. You got to kind of swan dive into it.
But he was a dirtbag.
He was a dirtbag.
Let's just clarify
that. But that little moment was an incredible piece of history, and took some gall for sure. But the other side of that too is the art of war. He says there's 5 faults of a general, and one is recklessness. And I always remember that. And like, never be reckless. And there's all sorts of like little mottos you could tie into there, and like strategy dictates success. So I think you definitely need to have a plan. But I also think don't be fearful to take risk once you have that in place. Like, just do it. I guess that's the easiest way. Nike.
I would like everyone to right now Google the amount of pages that are in The Art of War and realize what caliber of person we're talking to right now.
I had the Cliff Notes.
I doubt it. Probably read that over a summer for fun. So I have the feeling.
It's an awesome book, though. I would because it applies to business too. I mean, it is kind of a cutthroat mentality, but at the same time, it has its applications there that are relevant.
And so you are an extremely thought out person. So I remember I started Empowered Electric, or, you know, I didn't have the name. Yeah. I didn't have anything like that really completely figured out. Yeah. I feel like you did.
Yeah. Well, it took some time. We had 140 names to start with.
So when you say we, does that mean you? That you had come up with 140
Me and my
names?
support group, so my family, my sister, like my parents, like I bounced it all off of them. But yeah, so we had 140. We just kept whittling it down. Like, everybody kept cutting it. And then we got to MindMade, which we thought about before, but we figured everybody talks about handmade and craft, but in all actuality, so much more goes into it before it's just a product. And so really, before it's handmade, it's mind-made. And the mind controls the body. And so you have to have planning, like what you were talking about before. You have to understand, for instance, furniture making. You have to know how you're going to make that cut. You have to know how much waste you're going to have if you're responsible. You have to know how that comes together. You have to know how you're going to sell it and market it. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. And so craft is so much more than just something that's created with your hand. You have to be much more intentional, and that's kind of where we came from. We think about everything that goes into architecture and design.
That reminds me of probably one of my favorite quotes of all time. There's this preacher dude named Tim Keller, who, whether you're a Christian or not, he's just a brilliant like speaker and orator about thoughts and struggles and pain and all this stuff. But he always said, you'll never convince someone that something is true until deep down they hope that it's true. And I think like hope and belief go so hand in hand. And Definitely. Even like this podcast, you know, listeners, whether it's a professional or someone that's struggling or a teen or a stay-at-home mom or a single mom or, you know, whatever it is, it's just getting them to like have that spark that like change is real, that hope is possible, that a better future than their past is attainable. Yeah. And it's just like, you're right. It's like, before you ask, what do I do? It's like, is it possible? Can it be done? Is it worth it? Yeah. And it's like so much of like talking about risk and jumping out and support and love and hope and building and courage and all this stuff. It's just like, dude, it is. Yeah. It is. And it might not work out exactly how you planned. I don't know, maybe MindMade has, but I'd love to even hear that. Like, you have a plan. It's that Mike Tyson quote. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. You know, it's like, so how is, when did you start, like how long ago?
We celebrated 2 years in July of this year. So
Attaboy.
Yeah, it's a big success. I mean, we were moonlighting, but that's when we formalized the LLC or legalized.
Yeah, no, love it. Love it. And so did you think it was going to look like this? Projects, people, impact?
No, I was hoping it'd move a lot faster, honestly.
Oh, really?
It's taken so much work and effort, and I kind of want to backtrack just real quick. And you were talking about hope, and I think it's really interesting because there's a lot of quotes that go hand in hand with that, and there's so many out there, but one that comes to mind is the man in the arena quote, I don't know, by Teddy Roosevelt. And I think I decided at one point in time, like, I didn't want to be a critic anymore. And you know, that's where it started from. So we started thinking about all the things that were wrong per se, but I actually wanted to start doing something about it. And so that's really where it started from. And yeah, we kind of do want to be that hope in terms of, okay, another reason that MindMade started is because of foie gras. Have you heard of foie gras? You guys know what foie gras is?
Me and foie gras go way back.
So it's like it's a delicacy. It's a food. So it's actually but it's kind of torturous to the animal. So it's actually goose liver, but what they do is they overfeed the goose until essentially it kills it, and it enriches the liver. So it's like this really buttery, rich, fatty food. Well, oddly enough, like the parallel is what we're doing to people that are practicing the profession. So we're feeding them and overfeeding them and overworking them and forcing them down their throat, and it's not beneficial to the team, and it's not beneficial to the client, and it's not beneficial to the environment that is architecture. So yeah, that's kind of one that we started off of, and we think about sustainability a lot, and it's such a catchphrase that's kicked around, but like one step led to another, and we talked about sustainability as a business model, because if we take people under our belts, we take it seriously and we never want to let them go. So how do we create passive cash income so we never have to fire anyone, even in times of downturn? And then we talk about sustainability to where everybody wants to do a checklist, like LEED, which I'm not talking shit on. It's fine if it has its place, but we're so much more than a checkbox, where we want to build for longevity and permanence. We want a 50 to 100 year building, if not more than a 5-year building. And you guys can edit this out if you want, but we have a saying internally with us, and it's like, fuck your 5-year architecture, because we see it a lot. And it's happening, and it's pervasive, and we don't agree with it. And everybody wants to talk about sustainability like they're doing it, but they're not. They're taking the easy route. And so that's kind of where we came with the creative farm.
So what do you think about, what do you think about, so this is a really funny story. Dude, sorry, I'm just an idiot, and like, I connect dots way too much.
You got to run with it.
So we bought a Chrysler Pacifica, right? Yeah. It's like, it's a minivan. Yeah. They try to say it's not a minivan. It's like a sports minivan. It's a minivan. It's awesome minivan. But anyways, while we're buying it, we had a lot of friends, you know, which I'm not pro anything. I have a lot of family that works at Ford, so it doesn't matter. But we had a lot of people that were like, man, no, you got to buy the Toyota. Toyota Sienna or the Honda Odyssey, like these minivans, right? Because we have 4 kids. And they're like, it'll last forever. It'll last, 30 years, 20 years, all not 30, but, like 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at the Chrysler Pacifica, and it was like half the price of the Honda or the Toyota.
Sure.
And I remember the salesman said, you're absolutely right. What longevity-wise, like the Toyota is going to crush us, the Sienna is going to crush us, all these things. Do you want to drive the same car for 20 years? And I was like, oh, wow, you're right. So I can buy 2 of these in the course of, which is like the shinier new thing, right? So that's why we went with the Chrysler Pacifica.
Yeah.
It's a little different when you're talking about a building.
Yeah.
But what about, like in restaurants, there's a lot of turnover in restaurants. So what if someone is just wanting to buy a building that's going to last 5 to 15 years, and they're going to bulldoze it and put something else there?
Right.
Is there a place for that? And do you just want to not be a part of that? Because I feel like designing crap is bad, but designing for easy replacement isn't necessarily bad. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it's a mentality, and I think for instance, superstars hang out with superstars. And that's who they want to hang out with. They're not going to go hang out with the C team or D2 or where they can practice and hope to be better. And so for us, no, we don't really see a place for that. Not only are you wasting so much building material, but not only that, you're setting yourself up for failure from the beginning. So you're going into that business model and you're saying, I got 5 years on this lease. I'm going to gut all this and I'm going to go on to another restaurant. So I might not even take it seriously from the beginning, because I know I have an exit strategy before I even go into it. Exit strategy has its place, but it has to be very thoughtful, and there's a lot of constituents and kind of underpinnings that go to it. So I personally do not believe in it. It has its place, and I think it's unfortunate. We're witnessing, so it's a race to the bottom, as Seth Godin says, and that's a losing mentality. But I actually say it's the Gollum effect, which is so Gollum effect is a self-perpetuating kind of prophecy. So if you keep practicing the same things, then that's what's going to actualize. And I think that's what we're witnessing in architecture, is that everybody has this figment in their mind, and to me, it's kind of the wrong mindset. It can be so much better. I mean, if you think about it, think about your legacy, the way you're living. What do you want to leave people with? I don't think that it's, I want to be wasted in 5 years, or I changed personalities every 5 years. Like I'm going to be a stable, steady person, and this is what I want to leave on the effect on people. It's legacy. You go to Europe, those buildings are way different than here. And I know we're a young country, but we have to start setting a precedence for how we're going to proceed in the future as far as architecture and design goes. And so we try to operate out of that mentality and just, the common hip quote is like, stay woke. Is like, we just try to stay woke about what's going on in the world and in the market, and be the difference. Like, we're the antithesis, we're the anomaly. We're not going to do what common practitioners want us to do because it's easier, looks good on a spreadsheet. So yeah, I mean, if I see a Taco Bell or if I see a Chinese food buffet that I knew was a Taco Bell, like, I'm not trusting that. That's basically what I hear you saying, is you don't want your name on a Chinese food buffet that was once a Taco Bell every 5 years. Yeah, I think it's interesting because you think about fast food culture, think about how much that's changed in the past 5 years. And it's because people are becoming more conscious about what they're putting in their bodies, and maybe a little more critical, or however you want to paraphrase it. But it's kind of the same thing that we wish for architecture, is we're addicted to rapidity and kind of this instant gratification because of technology and so many other things. But we kind of want to slow that down, and rather it be a quality product over a quantity product. And so, yeah, like, back to our name, one of the things that we want to do is just be very intentional and be mindful about how we produce. So a lot of people go through the same steps, and so they're just in it going through the motions, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying we experience in an office. It's just the same in, same out strategy. Well, what we do is we kind of reanalyze, how are we communicating? Like, that's one of our biggest things. That's a core value as well. Your communication dictates your success, because I feel like it's a cornerstone of progress. So not only how we are communicating our designs, and so with tools, for instance, with the VR, or just how we are very thoughtfully presenting our designs, it saves us so much time to where we're not going through the motions and clients are getting confused, or we're missing pieces and parts that they've talked about before in our previous meetings, and we're missing them, but just because we're going through the motions and it's the same. No, we step back and we analyze it all, and we're very thoughtful about how we try to present it to the client, and we listen. Like, we listen. It's so incredible how many firms don't listen. They just push out product, and like, this is just how we do it, which is like one of the most crippling things you could do to your culture. It's like, well, this is just how we do it.
Yeah, well, no, so that's interesting. So has that led to more success? Like, I feel like a lot of people hate the architect at the end of a project. They're like, oh, well, look at this hallway they designed too small, or I remember a project we were just on where there was this beautiful window that was overlooking kind of their production facility, and there was a lot of stuff going on, and the spiral duct went right across their window. And we're like, why is it not higher than my window? Like, why am I looking at the ductwork? Yeah. And of course they moved it, but it's like, why do I, and the owner's mad. They're saying, why do I have to pay you to move the duct that you should have known?
Right.
I didn't want to just stare at.
Right.
I talk about that. As the end process been better for you guys in doing things like VR and thinking about it a lot on the beginning end?
Definitely. Like, it all comes down to quality control and just taking the appropriate steps to make sure it's all in line. Don't drop balls. We probably take way more time than we should. And our money or our bottom line kind of suffers because of that, but our quality at the end saves, not to get too like sales pitchy, but it does save a lot of stress. Like, that's what we feel like we're here to do. We're here to create a value to where we take, we have a saying. We have so many stupid sayings in our company, but
no, they're great.
But it's like, we're the best solution to the problem that you never knew you had. And that's because we try to take care of everything on the forefront. And I would say we do have a lot of success because we earn a lot of trust with that, because we explain what we're going through and kind of all the pieces and parts that happen in architecture. We've had clients that have shopped out after we've worked with them, shopped out the next architectural service. And, they say this is their fee versus our fee. Ours is a little bit higher. Well, that's okay, because they're never going to know the experience they had until they go to the other firm. And so we actually encourage that, because it sets us apart. It's like if you go buy a pair of Nikes and a pair of like Payless shoes, they're probably going to fall apart a little bit quicker, and you won't know until you actually try it. But it's a little more alluring because it's a cheaper shoe. So I think at the end of the day, by us being thoughtful and just carrying out the level of service that we want and just intentionality and awareness, I think we're winning at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Everything that you say, I'm like, I think that he read what I say and then makes it really smarter. Because we've always said, we've always said like we wanted to be the electrician that people wanted to use, not had to use. And it's I never heard the phrase. I don't know who Seth Godin is. Yeah. I've never heard the phrase "the race to the bottom," but it makes sense. Yeah. And it's like, dude, sometimes I don't want to do that kind of work either. Yeah. And I think I would be lying to say that I haven't taken that work, that I haven't done that work, that I haven't done the project that I knew was going to be out of business in 5 years. But look, I had to make a paycheck. Yeah. And I think I don't know if you've thought about this or what your thought on that is sometimes. So I said it in a previous episode where I said, don't make your preferences someone else's priorities. And when I hear you say, we want to only hold to these massively high standards, but we want to make sure that we keep people employed. I think sometimes I've taken jobs where it's like, hey man, this is a big open warehouse. I'm not super excited about it. It's definitely not Instagram worthy, but I got to keep these 4 guys busy, so I'm going to do it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So how have you thought through that? As you look to employ people and bring more people on full time, keeping your standards and keeping money coming in. Yeah. How are you going to do that?
It's really tough. That's one of the most common debates I feel like as a business owner, because you have to put food on the table at the end of the day. And that's the gut check. That's how you know if you're really walking the walk or you're just feeding people full of hot air. And, I feel like for us, it comes down to, again, just thinking about the avenues that you take. So there's one road, there's a fork in the road. I can spend this time doing this work for this amount of fee, and it's probably not going to be a great job for us in terms of relationship or portfolio piece or whatever it may be, fee even. Or I can take that time and I can really commit myself to building a relationship or pursuing someone that I know will lead me to another great. So it's all about time for us more than it is money, and we feel like it's a far more valuable resource. You're going to spend both. It's just which one do you admire more, or which one do you appreciate more?
Well, and I do think you're high standards, so I'm not trying to criticize you by any means.
No.
I'm saying no. So this is what I was thinking. I was thinking when you do maybe take a lower fee, but you still produce the same quality project or product. Yeah, people are blown away. I'm absolutely blown away by what you did, and it's that wow factor that creates a fan that wants to see you succeed now. And so if anyone ever said hey, do you know a great architect? I'm I just want to push them towards you. Yeah, part of the reason. That. The reason I say that is in electrical, it's if the architect, that freaking architect, it's actually the engineer, didn't put a plug where they should have.
Right.
And the owner says, hey, I want to put a plug there. I want this light moved here. They say something. Mm-hmm. Usually the first reaction of an electrician is to say, well, that's a change order, meaning you're going to have to pay me more money to deviate from what's on the drawings. Absolutely. And I remember, luckily, Brett Springs, one of the owners of the Rock Hill Grill and County Road Ice House, awesome dude, makes the most dope restaurants in Kansas City. I mean, he's a phenomenal dude. Yeah. But I remember very early on, bad habits die hard. And I remember kind of doing that to him, saying that to him. And he goes, hey, buddy, I know if I ask you to do something different, it's going to cost me money. Mm-hmm. Don't talk to me like I'm a child. Just, let's do this great project together, and I'll pay you what it's worth. Right. And some some clients would say that and then stiff you, and that's not the case with Brett. He's awesome dude, awesome restaurants. Right. But you know what I mean? It was kind of that people aren't stupid. If you go above and beyond, they're probably gonna know that. You know what I mean? It's
absolutely.
They know. So I think you're creating fans throughout the Kansas City area, because probably one of the most famous projects you did here in Kansas City locally was Monarch Coffee.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely
Definitely.
gorgeous. Actually, Kylie and Soren of Nickel and Suede, I remember they had like a big photo shoot there, and like they're not, I mean, they don't drink coffee. Like they're not in the coffee scene, yet they were like, this place is gorgeous.
Yeah.
I've never met someone that cares more about their brand than them. And they're like, we'll take photos here. So, I mean, like, kudos to you. I don't even know if you knew that happened, but it's like people go there and it's like, I don't even know if the coffee's good or not. I just know the place is awesome. I want to go and spend money there.
Yeah. And that's, what's so great about technology to one facet of what is technology is that we can almost take a pulse for if our designs are successful or not. And with Monarch, that's the epitome of the example that we did that with, is we just got on social media and saw what people were saying. And what's funny is, like, their coffee's delicious. They do a fantastic job, but they were talking about the space just as much as they were the coffee. And so for us, it was kind of the epitome of what we're trying to do. It's like your brand is equally paralleled on two sides, and that's the space that people experience. It's kind of like when you go to a nice restaurant, you talk about blue stem. You eat with your eyes before you eat with your mouth, is what a lot of chefs say. And so make it beautiful. And that's what we try to do. And there's a lot of things that go into it, but that's kind of what we're trying to do at the end of the day.
It was so funny. I went to, which not to throw them, well, I won't even throw them under the bus. I went to a place.
Don't do that.
I went to a restaurant that there's all this hype about this weekend, and I took my kids. Mistake number one. My daughter's literally rolling on the ground while I'm trying to order. My son runs over to pick her up, so she screams. Nonsense. But it wasn't that. Like, I looked like an idiot, of course. I'm accustomed to that. I don't understand how my wife does it. But there was like all these pinch points where like the design was just like clunky. Like there wasn't enough seating. Yeah. It was super awkward. People running into each other, and it's just like from hanging out with and admiring people like you and like noticing things like that. I'm like, and Brett with the Rock Hill and stuff. It's like I notice things different in restaurants, and I'm just like, this is a terrible use of the space. Now, I'm not a critic because I have absolutely no idea how you would make it better.
Right.
I just know my experience here was not pleasant. I might not come back. I'll probably come back without my kids. But yeah, it's just funny that you don't. I love that you said that. Like we solved the problems that you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
And that's honestly like a trailblazer right there. Because I don't know if there's many architects that are saying things like that.
Yeah.
So going back, you said that, whenever I asked, is MindMade, did you see it growing as fast or as strong or as whatever in the 2 years that you had started it? You said that it hasn't grown as fast as you would like. Kind of what do you see MindMade growing as or to, in the future?
Oh, man. So there's kind of two facets to that as well, kind of what we were speaking to. One's pragmatic and one's conceptual. So I think what we really want to do, and it goes back to sustainability as well, but so we're creating kind of what you referred to as the cult commune or whatever you said. But to us, it's the creative farm. And what we see is that as an architectural profession, as much as they praise or try to sing a song that they're creative, it's not a creative profession at all. It's become very mundane and systematic. And so what we're going to try to do is we're actually in fundraising to develop a creative farm. So what that is it's an interdependent system of all things creative on one tract, is what we say. And so we'll have fabrication, we'll have architecture, we'll have interior design, we'll have a restaurant, we'll have cabins, we'll have land, because we believe that that's kind of how it's going to be the most substantial benefit, not only to our staff, but also to our client, because we want to provide an environment that's insanely creative, like we've never seen before for the creative industries. And what that allows is kind of twofold. It allows kind of a retreat from the chaotic kind of life that is city life and all these like instant gratification and kind of the hustle and bustle that we're experiencing. And then kind of that release into an entirely different environment. So the other side of that would be that the staff can actually have freedom to either explore other professions or say if one facet of that environment isn't successful. So let's say we have a bad year for advertising and marketing, and instead of laying those people off, maybe the restaurant is highly successful right now. So they can actually be reallocated instead of completely letting them go. And so it goes back to that idea of sustainability as a business model, how we create a passive income and succeed from like a capital aspect of it.
That to me is super interesting for a couple reasons. Number one, because whenever I think of architecture, I think of Ted Mosby, architect of How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
And there's that little stint where he starts like Mosby Architecture, and he's got like a little assistant that ends up dating Robin.
Yeah.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, shame on you. You should watch that show. But he's always like giving him jobs like, go walk the streets of New York, touch the buildings. So when I think of like architecture, I think of a bunch of like city hipsters that are riding fixed gear bikes and like living in the city, not in a cabin.
Which I think has some truth,
Yeah, like not in a cabin, but like I feel like that's really good. I feel like breaking out of your element, it's one of the main reasons like that I don't read any books, which I wouldn't say that I wouldn't read any books, but like the construction books, I don't read those. Like I'm reading nonprofits, I'm reading fiction, I'm reading books on storytelling and writing and, you know, things like that, you know, are way more interesting in forming what I'm trying to do as a company. And so I could see like architecture students, like seeing the lines in nature and being able to craft a beautiful building. Off, like tree lines and things like that.
Yeah. It's not only how you cultivate an individual, but it's how you cultivate a profession and how you start to educate a client. Or honestly, what we're trying to do is completely turn a paradigm shift on its head. Like there's this like studious nature that we've taken on, that architecture is one way and it's progressing in this way. Well, it's the wrong way. So how do we flip that around? Well, we create an environment where we're physically and tangibly doing it. And so, I mean, I go back to, there's this really interesting episode on a podcast I listened to, and basically they've said no artist was ever an artist before the tool was created. And they use specific examples like Picasso. Think about if a paintbrush was never created. Think about Jimi Hendrix. If there was never a guitar, what would Jimi Hendrix be? And so what we're trying to do is actually
probably a shoe salesman.
Yeah, that was so good. Right on cue. But we're actually trying to create the tools and the environment that allow the artists to be artists and like flip a traditional office on its head. Why is an office behind four walls? Like it doesn't need to be anymore. And I think the younger generation that's just been tethered by traditional practice or like egos or something, it doesn't need to be that way. And so we really want to kind of harness that talent and give them a new environment to kind of thrive. And we're just trying to view things differently and do things differently. And so on the pragmatic side, the fundraising's been the hardest part of that.
Well, and so are you thinking about, you know, you're saying a restaurant and cabins and things like that. Are you thinking 5 people, 10 people, 20 people?
So we have a business plan. Our goal by year 3 would be, we would have about 50 people that would be staffed on this compound.
But not just architects.
No. Right. So we'd have chefs, we'd have people running the cabins.
It sounds to me, it's doable, because it sounds to me like Red Barn Farm in Weston, but like not to degrade it or whatever, but like you go there's a restaurant, there's a shop, there's a farm, there's all these different things. So why couldn't there be one for architecture?
Right. Absolutely.
So like, I mean, I think that was the same thing where it's funny. Like sometimes I feel like entrepreneurs just have to say, why not? Like, could there be, you know, like, and I had mentioned that one of the biggest influential books in me starting Empowered Electric was Pencils of Promise by Adam Braun, which if you haven't read that, you need to read it. It's phenomenal. It's
a good one.
But he basically is a nonprofit. Yeah. He's a freaking Justin Bieber, baby. But he was a nonprofit that wanted to operate like a for-profit.
Yep.
He wanted to lay people off if they weren't productive. He wanted to like make sure culture mattered and productivity, and he wanted to cut costs and build schools across the world the cheapest, fastest, most efficient way. He made like, if we were going to build a school in that area, the locals had to volunteer 50% of the labor. Like, you know, you put these requirements on there that like had not been heard of in like the nonprofit sector. And so I was like, well, wait a second, can I be a for-profit company with a nonprofit heartbeat that actually cares about people, not just in word, not just to like reduce the bottom dollar, but it's like to actually make employees happy, and then they're going to be loyal and they're going to want to do great things. And not only loyal, but like it's amazing to me. There's quite a few employees that have left to pursue other opportunities that we're still good friends. We talk, we text, we like, I'm rooting for them.
Of course.
And it's like in construction, usually it's like if someone leaves, like you hate them, you want them to fail.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want these people to fail.
Oh yeah.
I love that idea. And I say the cult compound just as a joke.
No, I know. Totally. I get it.
But how will you navigate have you thought through, or are you just going to figure out while you try, is like, you know, let's say like an architect decides like they don't want to be an architect, they would rather be a waiter. Yeah. Sorry, pay cut's coming.
Yeah. Like, I mean, that's a very real thing, but by creating the resource, we provide other resources. So for instance, if they wanted to be a waiter, we're also hoping to do a farm. So we kind of cut costs, but it's also beneficial to kind of the food movement that's happening. but you know, maybe they live in a cabin scot-free for a little while if we have one available, or maybe, so by creating all the resources on one site, we're allowed to kind of make things available that typically aren't in any other business. Like for us, it's more creating a lifestyle than it is about creating an 8 to 5 or a 9 to 5 job. Like we want to create something so much bigger, and so much bigger than us. Like my sister and I and all the other people who have started backing us, is like, it's not about us at the end of the day. We want to create something that thrives far beyond our existence, whether that's a concept or an idea or a physical, tangible place. Like that's what we're in this for.
That's beautiful. So kind of going on with that, it's hard to, and as we talked about, talking about you, the person, is different than you, the architect, the business person. How has MindMade though kind of changed you, opened your eyes, stretched you, grown you?
Oh, yeah, that's a fantastic point. I meet with a lot of people right now, and they're all thinking about doing their own business because the young people are so motivated and driven to kind of try their own thing. And I tell every single person that does that, go do it, like without hesitation, because you learn so much, not only about yourself, but how the world really works. When you're sitting behind a desk and you're dedicated to one project for a year, you only know that one thing. But when you go out and start a business, it opens the doors to so many opportunities, so much knowledge, so much relationships, so many people, and you really start to understand how a business works, not only financial, but also politics, relationship, what you want to do, what you don't want to do. And so I tell everyone, just go do it. You can always go back to an office, but you learn so freaking much, and you push yourself to a level. And to be quite frank, it scares me sometimes, because you feel a certain power that you've never understood sitting behind a desk, because you think you're kind of like a puppet in the game to some extent. When you go out and start running your own business, you understand the power behind all the moves, and you understand your capability and the potential you have as not only a person, but dedicating yourself to society and like your servitude. And, sometimes I sit back and I'm like, my God, like you get a little taste of it and it's addictive to some extent. Like for me, like I'm a borderline workaholic. And so I have to remember to turn that off and just understand I'm still a person. Like I can only do so much in a day. But to the point, if anybody's thinking about starting a business, I automatically say, go do it.
Yeah. And especially, so I would definitely say, especially if you're young, not married, no kids, when your responsibilities are low, get out there and do it, because guaranteed every person that is doing it, that has responsibilities, which I don't mean that in some kind of hierarchy, I took a bigger risk than you because I was married with 4 kids. I just mean, it's like, dude, if I could have done this before I was married, I would have saved a lot of heartache. Yeah. It would have been not easy, but easier. You know what I mean? It's not going to be easy. No. It's definitely not going to be easy.
It's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so definitely young people that are listening, whether you're in college, you've just started your profession, I would definitely say, talk to people, because that's the thing too, is like anyone that's like, I'm going to start my own thing, I'm going to start my own t-shirt company right now. It's like, hey man, you had whittled down 144 names with your parents and your sister and stuff. Like, it sounds like it wasn't just some idea that you had devoid of, other people and their insight. And,
sure.
You were also thinking about this after you had a skill, because that's the other thing, that it's like, you're an extremely skilled person, and I'm not a skilled person, but I did have a skill that people were willing to pay for, AKA I changed light bulbs. If people's light bulbs burn out, I'm there. Yeah. And it's like, if you don't have a skill, I would be careful. Like, if people aren't going to pay you for what you know or what you can do, be careful.
You figure out real fast if you're cut from that cloth. Like, you have to put up or shut up, and it really tests you. But again, I think if you have a mission or you have a cause and you have enough gusto and dedication, perseverance, like it's going to happen. You just have to be intentional about it.
See, it's so funny to me, because I think I tell most people not to start a business, and
really?
I'm not saying you're wrong. Well, it's
no,
just
I
because,
think that's interesting.
No. The reason I say that is because, like, 4 years ago, had I known about MindMade, I probably wouldn't have started Empowered. I would have tried to come work for you. And I usually tell people, hey, go find someone that's building what you want to build and jump on board. And treat it as your own. Like I'm saying, if I would have interviewed with you and said, hey Shane, I have this construction experience. I really love what you're doing. I really enjoy this idea. I want to be involved. I like the design process, but I'm not an architect.
Yeah.
And you would have just been like, go get me coffee and all this nonsense. I'd have been like, screw this.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like if you would have like saw the potential in me and invested in me and given me, a little bit of the risk and reward. I'm not saying equity. I'm just saying like the opportunity to be the number 2 at MindMade, the number 3 at MindMade. It's like, yeah, dude, that's a great opportunity. And so I sometimes just push kids to that of
I think that's so funny that you said that. We don't have titles. Like that's one of our things. No titles, and then everybody.
I just said numbers. I didn't say titles.
Well, yes, same thing. But like everybody gets to pick a word. So mine's grit. My sister's is intentionality. Like everybody has their different word. And then second fold is we actually interviewed someone today, and she was just terrified about. She just wants to go part-time because she's kind of doing her own thing as well, and all these different fears that she had. And I was like, listen, you come on board with us, you're a business owner, and I want you to work like you're a business owner. There's no hours. There's no office place. There's nothing like that. There's no expectation except that we excel expectations at all costs. And that's the one thing that we're going to hold you to. And, of course, we have our set of core values, but...
which can be read where?
They're on our website. So if you go to our website and go to the what and the how, it's right there on those. We have about 25 of them. Free download. They're high res.
MindMadeKC?
MindMadeKC.com. Yeah.
Okay. And if they're looking you up on Instagram, it's MindMade, all spelled out with underscores in between every letter.
Yeah, but you can actually type out MindMade.
Oh, can you? Okay, because I was going to say that's a pain in the butt.
Lauren said the same thing.
Yeah. But no, that's great. You can type out MindMade and hit follow.
Yeah.
Shane, dude, I mean, I could not say it enough. I think you're an amazing dude. I think what you're doing is going to maybe not change architecture overnight, but it's going to have that ripple effect that definitely gets people thinking, what if? Which all dreamers, like we said with Columbus. I mean, imagine a dude coming home or a lady coming home going like, hey man, this guy said there's land past the horizon. I'm gonna go try it. Sure. It started with that thought. It started with that belief, and definitely inspiring me. I guarantee there's tons of listeners, whether it's college students, young professionals, whatever, that are gonna get a lot from this. Any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Just be really, really intentional about where we are as a society and how we operate even on the individual level. I feel like we're in a really volatile state, not only in what we're producing, but how we're producing it. And I would say just be really conscious, study your history, study the company that you're at or whatever profession you're in, and just be almost like monastic and overly curious about it. And I would also say just because you watch a video doesn't mean you know how to do it. Like go out and learn through experience and get your hands dirty and just push yourself to a level that you never thought you could. I'm scared every day. Like a lot of people think that they have this all figured out or they pretend that they have this all figured out. I guarantee you that everybody is doing the best they can with what they got and they don't know what they're doing. We're doing it as we go and we're doing the best we can with the skill set that we have. And so I would say, dude, just fight that fight. Like find what you stand for. I like my stepdaughter all the time. She's the strongest spirit I know and she loves to fight. And I tell her every day, I respect your fight, but you have to know what you're fighting for. And so I would say just maintain that clarity or find that clarity, understand it. And honestly, I would just say surround yourself with people who understand. If I could do it all over again, I would start with a partner from day one. But I tell you, the fight is worth it at the end of the day. It's exhausting. It's also invigorating. But if you find that fight and you really believe in it, quit at no cost, or don't quit at any costs. Keep going.
Dude, absolutely.
Same thing as my first episode.
Yeah,
keep going.
Dude, absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Well, guys, that was a freaking treat. It was extremely exciting. If you have not listened to the first episode, be sure to go back. Shame on you. Go back and listen to it. Shane with MindMade, dropping knowledge, really helping people out, really dreaming big. Guys, as always, thanks a ton for listening. Each and every week, we're going to keep doing this. Mondays, we're dropping motivational stories, trying to get you out there personally, stories that try to inspire you to be a better version of yourself. And every Thursday, we're going to interview. We're going to keep interviewing people. If you know someone or if you are someone that wants to be interviewed, that wants to tell their story, be sure to reach out, dude. We're interviewing nonprofits, chefs, architects, construction workers, everyone has a story worth telling. Well, most people have a story worth telling. And no, we want to hear it, guys. If you would please, if you liked it, share it on Facebook, on Instagram. Hit us up with some likes and some reviews. Guys, until next week, talk to you later.
Thank you guys so much.